Hello there guys, it's Kit Bowman again. I'm glad you're here, came back again for another video, another read aloud. So I hope you all had a nice summer so far. Can't believe it's nearly the end of summer holiday. Therefore, I'll be doing another read aloud since I have been recorded children's read aloud video earlier. So here by Smegging, I'm going to continue reading Red Dwarf backwards by original co-creator Rob Grant. I hope you enjoyed when I read Red Dwarf backwards so far. So I'm going to move on to continue reading Red Dwarf backwards on six parts. Now, when in part 2, it's Smoke Me A Kipper, I'll be back for breakfast. So let's begin. Billy Joe Evston knew he was a coward, and what's more, he knew everyone else knew it too. He gave it off, stank off it, somehow emanated it, like the stench from a week dead stank. And on this Saturday night, he sat hunched over his usual bar space, on his usual bar stool, over his usual drink, emanating away and trying to get drunk enough to help him forget he was a coward, which, as usual, was not going to work. Billy Joe, call sign the Jewish cowboy, was 19 years old, and he knew just about all there was to know about piloting state-of-art Space Corps craft. He sailed through the written tests, breezed through the oral exams, excelled at the Fury, and in 2 days' time he was going to get thrown out of the corps. The day after tomorrow, he was going to take and fail his final Space Corps examination flight for the third and therefore last time, because when it came to the dangerous stuff, the low-level passes over the high-gravity rock deserts of Miranda, Billy Joe Epstein would, at the last moment, lose his nerve and fare away, because, as they said behind his back in the locker room, Billy Joe just didn't have a love spud. He looked down into his shot glass and saw his own cowardly reflection staring at him contemplatively in the treacle-coloured liquor. So he drained it and looked up to order another one. She didn't see him, of course. She never seemed to be looking in his direction, even if he was the only one in the bar, which was not uncommon. But that was defined by Billy Joe, because it gave him more chance to be looking at her. Her name was Mammy. Not that Billy Joe he had ever plucked up the courage to call her by her name. She was, well, better than him. She could have her pick of her jocks, who jostled the bar to have the honour of flirting with her, and she wouldn't even give them the time of day. She was special. Her hair, well, wouldn't say it was brunette, and couldn't say she was a redhead either. In between, kind of, depending on the light, and her eyes were blue and they weren't green. But you get an idea. And Billy Joe didn't converse with her at all, except to order for his drinks and keep his manners with please and thank you. Everything else would have been just inconfessable. I thought even when he had a temerity to creep into his mind of actually asking her out on a date made him feel like someone was twisting his stomach bag and both ends with a high tension turn wrench. While he was waiting for her to notice he wanted something, Billy Joe felt a tap on his left shoulder. He turned to stare into a gleaming now of metal. I believe you are in my seat, Sonny. Billy Joe looked around. There is no one else in the barroom. There were 9 empty stools, count them 9, ranked along the bar. Mammy was looking over now. He felt his ears began to glow. He glanced at the Chock's armband. The commander, sure. Billy Joe shrugged. Sorry. He slipped over to the adjacent seat as manfully as he could. What stinking luck! The commander grinned. That one's mine as well. Billy Joe was smiling, not out of bravado, but because his face didn't know what else to do with himself. Was this officer trying to pick the fight? Mammy steps over and asked Billy Joe, what will it be? I was here first, old love. The commander smiled pleasantly. No, you won't, Mammy returned a smile. The commander's hand shot out a rattlesnake fast and grabbed Mammy's wrist. Let's not have any back chat, old love. His smile remained even and calm. Mammy didn't make the sound, but Billy Joe could see she was hurting. He cleared his throat. I think you've probably had a couple too many drinks, sir. He tried to make it sound as contentious as possible. Maybe you probably should think about possibly not manhandling the lady that way you reckon. The officer's smile broadened. He dropped Mammy's wrist. You feel possibly, perhaps, you may be man enough to probably stop me, you reckon? He parodied. Sir? Billy Joe stuttered. Oh, let's forget about rank here, lady. The officer slipped off his jacket, its medals clacking musically. As he laid it carefully on the bar stool. Let's forget I'm your superior lead officer. Let's forget my gold bars, my medals, and unarmed combat training officer badge. And let's just do it. Billy Joe's face was still wearing the same smile it came in with. and his ears felt like they were about to burst into the flames as he watched the officer calmly rolling up his shirt sleeve. Though they really it's no. Nay. It was only one syllable word, but Billy Joe started pedantically and ended it horizontally. And he had no idea where the blow had hit him, but his whole face hurt. He looked up. The officer was already rolling his sleeves back down, as if that one blow would be enough to put Billy Joe Upstein down and keep him there. Something about that made Billy Joe mad enough to make him ignore his instinct to stay down and play dead. Mad enough to make him get to his feet and square up to the man. He felt ridiculous. He didn't know how to fight. He didn't even know how to stand for a fight. He tried hunching up and making small, tight circles with his bunched fist. But he felt like he was in Tom Brown's school days or something. All his life he'd avoided fights, and now here was picking his first one with a multi-decorated officer who specialized in unarmed combat and could probably kill him 8 different ways with each of his fingers. Officer raised his eyebrows in delight. "Your game, Sonny," he glanced. Splendiferously stuff. Needed something to get the old circulation going in the festaroonies. Billy Joe actually saw a second blow. He didn't see it quite quickly enough to avoid it, but it was definitely an improvement he felt as it landed on his feet ear hard enough to rattle his brain against his skull like the cage Budger in the earthquake. Although he felt it was probably futile even to try, he launched a punch of his own. His vision wasn't exactly clear, but he aimed roughly at the center of vibrating image of the officer and was surprised when his knuckles made contact with flesh and bone. The officer drew his hand across his lip and looked oddly at the smell of blood, as if it weren't real. Could it be happening? Billy Joe hit him again. Officer staggered back. He shook his head. His composure was gone. Anger sprang to his face. And snarling, he leaped at Billy Joe like a rabid wolf. Billy Joe twisted to one side, using a man's momentarium against him, and helped him tidily over the bar. When he crashed spectacularly into the sack of bottles promoting clear-head, alcohol-free vodka, Billy Joe stood when he was making his Tom Brown circles with his fists until he became obvious that the officer wasn't going to get up again. Then Billy Joe grabbed the commanding officer's jacket. He was astonished how heavy the clattering metals were, and dumped it over the bar on his opponent's groaning body. "Maybe you should think about leaving now, sir," the officer grunted, staggered to his feet, and crunched over the broken glass and out of a bar without looking back. You wanted a drink?" Billy Joe turned from the door. Mammy was smiling at him. At him? He shook his head. "I don't think so." "Of the house?" "No thanks. I've got a big flight exam in a couple of days. I should keep the clear head." "Well?" She smiled again. "Any time." That's right, kind." He flicked her a salute and turned to go. "Good luck with the test, Billy Joe." He almost froze in the door, but he managed to keep walking. She knew his name. Maybe he plucked the courage to ask her out. After all, maybe it was less of crowd than he thought. He might even have enough spuds to make the low-level flight. He made a deal with himself. If he could do that, he could ask Mammy to pass him out bull. He caught the glimpse of something glimmering in his right hand. He opened his palm. A St. Christopher medal. He must have grabbed it during the fight. He slipped it into his pocket and forgot about it. And that simple act would save quite a few lives. Admiral Peter Tranter had several names, most of which he knew and approved of, and a few he didn't know, and certainly wouldn't have enjoyed. To his peers, he was known at Bungay, though no one could really recall why. To the rank and file, he was known, predictably, Billy, as Admiral of the Old Man. To his valet, Kevin, he was himself, or in the dark recesses of the R&R Club, after the bout of intense bad humour and several gimlets, skunk foot and finger draws, his mistress called him Bun Bun to his face. Behind his back, she called him Cheese. Right now, Vinegar Draws was doing his best to destroy the pile on his absurdly luxurious carpet in his ridiculously large office, as he paced distractedly around his obscenely huge desk. He wasn't much of an admiral, just one-star job. He commanded a Space Corps research and development program, which, despite its impressive title and its even more impressive budget, was the smallest based in the corps, and his post was generally regarded as the last demanding in the Admiralty, which was why, of course, he had commanded such an visibly spacious office. He ordered the disproportionately massive desk and paddled around in his legendary stinky footwear on the carpet so thick that golf balls could and did get lost in it. It was his way of bestowing rank upon himself. He had been a high flyer once, one of the youngest officers ever to achieve a command star. Then, inexplicably, the proud, pouring engine of his career had futtered and stepped. He had received a series of increasingly obvious side rays, posting until this one, the ultimate dead end gig. There was no sideways from R&D, only up or out. He had spent many long hours wondering about the why of it. He had let it affect his work, his alcohol consumption, his personal hygiene, and worst of all, unless you were his valet, he had let it affect his marriage. He tormented himself with increasingly paranormal explanations. Was there some kind of plot among a faceless pen pushers of Space Corps administrations to keep the best men down and promote only fools and dickwits? Had it been something, he said, offhand, at some engine somewhere, which had so offended some superior that only fitting revenge had been to keep Tranter in permanent hustlers, democracy. He has almost resigned himself to dynamic career, where he never had to make a serious decision, contribute to policy planning, or achieve anything more significant or earth-shattering than shagging his mistress from a multiple diners angles offered by his overly homogeneous and otherwise denked desk. When Project Wildfire came along, Project Wildfire, burn, take it up and out of air. The problem with space travel research was a humankind seemed to have reached the upper limits of its capabilities. The last significant advance in the field, demi-light speed drives, it had been achieved before Bongo had been born. Of course, there were always minor improvements, tweaks to make engines more efficient, new formulae for cleaner, cheaper fuel, but nothing major. A few years back, Cheese had become quite excited about a prospect for matter transference devices, but after endless months of loading various rodents into the sending stations and scrapping out gerbil, molecular milch from the remote receivers, even the most fervent advocates of MT had dropped, bugging him for more budget. Project Wildfire was different. Project Wildfire was a code name for prototype craft that theoretically could break the big one, could break the speed limits of the universe, the light barrier, and it worked, sort of. It promised new horizons for the human race, virtually instantaneous travel. The operations of ephemeral, unexplorable star systems, and the most magnificent of all, another pip for Admiral Stankfoot. And now, just days before the inaugurated test flight disaster, the test ship had returned. It had returned approximately 3 days before it set off. Now, the turbine was sold. If you choose to look at the upside, they now had two fire ships for the price of one. No small bill, considering the cost of damn thin, and as a rather pleasant side effect, they appeared to have advised some form of time travel. On the downside, however, there were clearly some flaws in the design, evidenced by a fact that the returning craft had been damaged beyond repair, and its pilot charred, dead, and almost unidentifiable. Almost. So, this was Trender's dilemma. This was why he paced with nervous fury around his prop from a land of the giant's desk. Did he call off a mission and risk his one great shot at a personal advancement, or did he send his best and most respected pilot to the certain and unspeakable death? Of course, he had already made the decision, though he couldn't acknowledge it. What he was really agonizing either. Was his just a justification for it? Surely, since a craft had already returned, he was duty bound to send it off. In fact, did he really have a decision to make? Wasn't it inevitable casualty and all that? Did he own it to the history to embark on this, the next stage of humankind's technical evolution? Didn't he really need that extra pip? It was a curious feeling, no question, staring at the blackened remnants of their own grinning skull. Hard not to shudder, though. Ace thought of the impulse he peered into the sightless sockets of his third doppelganger, as if he expected some glimmer of recognition to have flicker back at him. From the dull darkness, the technical boys were off checking and rechecking the DNA profile, but Commander Rimmer didn't need any chemicals verification. It was his skull. All right, taunted into a familiar, obscene lair of a sudden heat death. There was a gold tooth, a trophy from the Academy boxing finals in the second year. There was a small nick to the right of his forehead from a childhood game of cowboys and Indians, when his brothers had cast him as General Custer while they played Sonic's Nation, and Howard had got carried away and slung a real tomahawk at him. He tightened his mouth in a grim parody of a smile and slid his gaze down to the flight suit, remarkably intact, considering the temperatures it must have endured. Ace made a metal note to write to the manufacturers and command them for their workmanship. He paused momentarily on the tortured metal of his badge of rank, and then tried once again to study the wrecked control panel, an exploding mess of wires and screen chunting out of the twisted fascia of the cockpit. There was something out of the kilter here, something that shouldn't have been, something important. He called it down to the shower of sparks, spatting from under the Scotch nose cone. Spanner's old love. The spark spray stopped as a hot wasp of the ACT lane dead died. Yeah, you say you have checked out the dash a dozen times. What's left of it? And it all seems thick talk. I don't know, there's something about it that bugs me. The wheels on the trolley of an inspection board squealed against the hunter's rough tarmac as Lister slid out from under the craft and tugged up of his his welding mask. Can't put my finger on it. He stared up into the glare of the skylight and studied the paradox of Commander Rimmer's silhouette, inspecting himself. Lister's facial muscles yanked his lower lip a quarter of an inch higher in a Hannah 101. Good quality smiles were in a short supply his particular day. You are not going, you know. How's that, matey? Ace prodded at the buckled temperature gauge, which was partially obscured by the melted mass of his St. Christopher medallion. Not unless we worked out what went wrong. Don't you start going soft on me, Spanners. You heard what the old man said. This match kicks off at 0600 in the AM, and I'm centre forward. I heard what he actually said was, "It's up to you." That's the way a gentleman ordered another gentleman on a suicide mission, Spanners. It's just good form. Good form? Good form? You're going to get barbecued up there, and you are talking like it's another topping adventure for the famous five. Ace lowered his shades and hopped 15 feet down from a cockpit and landed on the tarmac with an easy grace of a prepubescent Russian gymnast. Look, he took out the spotless handkerchief and wiped a sooty grin through his perfectly manicured fingers. Come what may, I'm going to pot this party Spanners. It's the chance of a lifetime. Okay, so let's stop here on page 90. Well, I hope you all Smegheads enjoyed this video when I read this British science fiction comedy Red Dwarf backwards by Will Grant. As you know, I'm such a huge fan of Red Dwarf. Especially my favourite episode was The End, Pop Backwards and Dimension Jump. I hope you guys feel happy about when I read Red Dwarf books. I hope it seems more interesting to you guys. So, I hope we're going to continue reading Red Dwarf on part 7. It's going to be a long book to finish. Okay, Smegheads, and I hope you make sure you support me, Melado, on social medias, and leave your comments down below and give a thumbs up. Always remember to subscribe to my channel, hit the bell notification, and don't miss out the future video. Hopefully, I'm going to continue reading Red Dwarf on part 7. I hope you see all Smegheads later. And Smoke Me A Kipper, I'll be back for breakfast. I'll see you for a short while.